Hi, it's Benjamin here, Safe Drive Solutions, your dash cam specialists. And today we're going to go through an IROAD X11 and give you an idea of how we change the settings. This is via the iPhone app, and we're going to show you exactly how to change this stuff. So, as you can see, if we go to settings, that's the first thing we're going to do. And we're going to go into time. So if we want to set the time zone, and let's say you don't live in the greater Vancouver area, you would go in here and select your time zone. And if daylight savings time, like right now, is happening, then you actually just leave it on. That way it corrects the time with the GPS. ADAS is driver assistance stuff. Typically, most people don't turn this on. A lot of newer vehicles have all this stuff already on. However, if you do want to turn this on and have lane departure warning, you can actually set the speed that it activates where it starts giving you warning beeps and the sensitivity as well. And every vehicle you will have to kind of play with this to see what the proper settings will end up being. So we go into system here, and if we click on info, if you have a fleet, you can actually set like a driver and a license plate number. Typically, most of the consumers are not going to set up any of this stuff. This is mainly for like if you're running a fleet and you want to know which unit belongs to which vehicle. When you look at the model, it says X11, and if there was any firmware updates, it would show up right here where the firmware version is. Okay, as we scroll down, this is our low battery protection. So if I turn this off, that means there's no battery protection in parking mode, which means it'll stay on until your battery is dead. So it's very crucial that you leave the low battery protection on. I do recommend having it at 12 volts or higher, period. That way, it's actually, if it drops below 12 volts, the dash camera will shut off to protect the battery of your car. Because at the end of the day, it's important that you go to work. So, security LED. On the front camera, the LED will flash back and forth quite frequently. And a lot of people don't tend to like that. They find it draws attention to the car. So we always recommend turning this feature off. That way you're not drawing attention while parked. I mean, people are concerned about whether or not someone will steal the dash camera. I really have only seen that once, and it was with a client who owns a BMW, kind of in a bad neighborhood, and he left his vehicle unlocked. They didn't do any damage to his car. They didn't steal anything out of his car other than the dash cam, because they were probably up to something they shouldn't have been in the area anyways. However, had the LED been off, probably a good chance he would have caught it on dash camera and would have been able to report it. Just one of the things that we do recommend. It is up to you if you want security LED. It may deter some people from possibly doing something. That is a possibility. However, we find the majority of clients prefer to have it off. High temperature shutdown. We always turn this on because if the unit reaches 75 degrees Celsius, right, after the power is cut off to protect the product, right? So this is all to protect you because you don't want to have the SD card melting. You don't want to have, the unit failing. You want to have longevity. So we do recommend this. Where we are located in Greater Vancouver, Canada, honestly, last year it got pretty close to this kind of heat. And I did hear of a few other competitors' dash cams shutting down because they were getting close to this. But mostly the SD card was failing, not the unit itself on the other competitors' products. So this is just kind of a fail-safe to protect the unit. The IROAD does last a little bit longer in terms of heat because a lot of other competitors put their GPS, their Wi-Fi, and all that stuff on board, while IROAD uses an external Wi-Fi dongle and external GPS antenna. And the reason why they do it is to remove less heat from the board, so it'll last longer. So parking mode timer. This is how long you would want it to last in parking mode. Keep in mind that the majority of people's batteries will not last like 12, 24, 48 hours. Okay. So, for instance, if you didn't want parking mode at all, you would select 1 minute. So if you're only worried about while driving, you select 1 minute, and what's going to end up happening is it will actually shut off 1 minute, about 1.5 minutes after you get out of the car, go to sleep, and then it won't turn back on again until you come out to your vehicle and turn the ignition on. What I recommend to the majority of my customers is to put it on 3-hour parking mode. I do find that with the majority of customers' batteries in their car, if they drive frequently, you usually can get a consistent 3 hours while parked. You know, you might be able to stretch to 6 hours depending on the vehicle, the size of the battery, etc., right? But all this fake advertising you see online where it says, you know, it'll do 24-hour parking mode, the majority of our batteries are not. You know, you think about a Honda, Mazda, Toyota, Kia, you know, all of these vehicles have very small batteries and it will not last that amount of time. So I give my recommendation of 3 hours to the majority of my clients when I do installs. That's what I feel it will last on a more consistent basis. So if you go shopping, you go to a movie theater, you want to go out and eat at a restaurant, there's a good chance you're going to get it. Now, if you are more concerned about it working for 24 hours, I do recommend getting into a power cell. That's a whole different thing. We have other videos that discuss that. Either way, let's move onwards. Memory storage overwrite. Everybody always asks, is it going to delete the old video file recordings? And that's correct. That's exactly what's going to happen here. So as you can see, it says overwrite. As long as you have this on, once the memory card gets full, it'll delete old video recordings and record new video recordings. It's not going to delete all of them, but if it's recording, you know, in continuous mode, about a 1 minute record time, it's going to delete the old 1 minute, record a new 1 minute. Okay. Now, GPS speed display. So right there, if you got a heavy foot and you don't like to drive the speed limit, you might want to turn that off. Or just completely unplug the GPS speed display. But for me, I mean, I always leave it on. I do find the majority of traffic out here drives about, 10 to 15 over. As long as you're not driving, 50 over. If you're driving extremely aggressively, frequently, that GPS speed display is definitely going to go against you. However, choice is yours. Just letting you know, this is where you change it. It's under the systems menu. Now, let's go to recording. Now, this is pretty cool. I don't really show a lot of people this because typically most people just want it to record at 30 frames per second. But you can actually select for even while you're driving that it records at like 2 frames per second, 25 frames. So you can actually select what it records at while you're driving through the front camera. And you can also go through and change the rear camera as well. So you could actually take, if you recorded really low quality, let's call it like 5 frames per second, you can get 6 times the amount you normally would. So to kind of give you an idea, this SD card that comes with it was a 64 gig. You would get on average about 6 hours continuous record time, not including the parking mode. But now let's say we recorded at 5 frames per second, right? We would get about 36 hours of continuous record time if you change the front and rear to 5 frames per second. So pretty crazy, right? You can also change the brightness. Typically, I leave it on default. I do find that that's fine, but the choice is yours. We go to sound. So this is how loud it talks to you. I typically recommend medium, but let's say you want it to be a little bit louder, change it to high. And if you find it, you don't really want to hear much of it, you can change it to low. It doesn't talk much. Typically, when you get in the vehicle, it'll let you know, safe driving, time to start. And then when you get out of the vehicle, it'll say parking mode will now start. And if there was some sort of major impact that it did detect while in parking mode, it will typically prompt you saying, impact detected while parked. So these kinds of things is what it does say. Audio recording. I do recommend leaving audio recording on because as you will see later in the video, when you download a video, you have the option of downloading the video with or without audio. So I always recommend leaving it on, because let's say somebody gets out, starts yelling at you, you blah, 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 blah. Now you have the audio of them, verbally abusing you, which could help depending on what happens, right? On the other hand, maybe you say something you shouldn't. You can also choose to not download that with the audio. But at least with the audio recording on, you have that power. The other big thing too is you actually can yell out license plates. So some people, what they'll do is they'll actually yell out license plates like V2V, 0B3, right? So let's say somebody cuts them off, they'll yell it, and now the audio recording has a copy of that license plate. Pretty cool. So voice guidance. This is the when you get in the car, when it speaks to you, when it says, hey, continuous recording will now start, safe driving, and then parking mode will now start. If you don't want to hear that at all, turn off the voice guidance. Some people don't like hearing it at all. I do personally like it talking. The reason why is because let's say there is a problem with the dash camera. You get in the car, you hear it does not speak. It might alert you to go, hey, there might be something wrong with the dash camera. Now don't get me wrong, these are really good dash cameras, but at the end of the day, it's better to be safe than find out that you've turned the voice guidance off. Like I said, just my recommendation. Sure, call on what you want to do. I turn the event buzzer off for all my clients, because as you drive around, if you hit like speed bumps, potholes, that kind of stuff all the time, I always recommend turning the event buzzer off. I find this to be very annoying. Otherwise, you hear beep, beep, beep all the time. You think of a thinkware. Thinkware is a great product. It's one of the ones we sell. But one of the complaints that my customers do have is they can't turn that beep off. They find it very nerve-wracking sometimes while driving, especially if you're on a bumpy road. So, I had one client recently, he actually turned off all impact recordings completely because, when he's driving down a bumpy road, it would just go beep, 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 beep the whole time while driving down the road. So this at least gives you the opportunity to turn it off, turn the event buzzer off. That way you don't hear those beeps and it doesn't distract you while driving. So we're going to go to event. So this is if you want to pick up impact. So if you want to pick up impact, which obviously I recommend having turned on, this is for while driving, we're specifically talking about. On the X11 and the X5, I do find that having a low sensitivity works best for most vehicles. If you have it on medium, it's a little too sensitive, and you're going to find that the red light is flashing way too frequently while driving, which means the G sensor is picking up lots of impacts while you're in motion. So, like I said, typically I recommend low, and that would be why. Now we're looking at parking mode, and this is the sensitivity of impact while in parking mode. So same options, low, medium, high. I recommend medium. Why? Because your vehicle is not in motion. It's actually stationary. So typically, if you're in motion, there's a higher chance of you having a bigger impact both ways with the other car or whatever you end up hitting. But when you're stationary, I like to have it a little bit more sensitive. I don't recommend having it on high because let's say it rains aggressively or something like that. You might come back to your car and have, 40 incidents because it was raining heavily. While with medium, you're kind of playing the best of both fields, where typically it works in your favor. Motion detection. So the way the IROAD X11 and X5's parking mode works is they're recording in time-lapse mode, which means they're recording at about 1 frame per second. It's recording about 1 picture per second. Normal recording is 30 frames per second, which means it's like 30 pictures per second, which makes it a lot smoother and looking more like a movie. However, the benefit of this is it's taking up way less SD card space. However, The reason why I recommend having motion detection turned on for an X11 and an X5 is because if somebody walks into the frame, it now records at about 10 frames per second. So the whole point of that is now it's taking about 10 pictures per second. So it's taking more information because it's wondering, is something about to happen? What's going on here? So that's my recommendation of what I, like to do. Now this is post-impact recording time. Now, what that is if you are to get into an accident or have some sort of impact to the vehicle while driving or even while parked. This means post-impact recording time is going to be 6 seconds. The entire video will be 20 seconds. Why? This is important. So you don't need to have a minute. Your accident's not going to take you a minute. You get into an accident, it's a couple seconds, but you're going to want to have the build up and you're going to want to have what happens after the accident. And the other thing is if you're submitting these videos to ICBC, which is the insurance company in Greater Vancouver, or your insurance company typically across North America, the majority of them only want about a 25 megabyte file. So if you're, trying to download a minute or 3-minute video, which some other dash cams have, that video file might be really big. And depending on how good you are with technology, you're now going to have to go and edit this video. You're going to have to trim it down. While if you keep it to 20 to 30 seconds, typically you might stay under that file size. Either way, this is what I recommend. It just means every time you have an event, you're only taking about 20 seconds up. Instead of like a full minute or 30 seconds, it just makes it for your event folder to have more room and to record more incidents when they happen. Event recording capacity. So what the event recording capacity is basically if your dash camera, we have a 64 gig SD card. And what you do on here is this is the amount that you want to have available for event recording, which would be motion detection and impacts on your vehicle. That is what would go in there. So on here, as you can see, it says it's going to format it. So if I change this at all, it will actually format it, right? So depending on what you're looking at for information, I've had some of my clients change it to 50. I usually recommend anywhere from 20 to 30% for events, just because sometimes something happens while driving where you weren't even part of the accident, but you might want to go back and view that accident. So that's just something I do recommend. However, you can easily change this. Keep in mind, if you keep this at 0, that means all your events will go directly all into the same folder and will be continuously overwritten, the same as all the other ones. Now the events will get overwritten. However, they will only get overwritten as the event recording is filled up. So now what we want to do is if we're going to actually save these settings, we click OK, and the dash camera is going to shut off, reset, and save those settings.
Setting changed. Restarting the system.
I hope this video helps you out with explaining all the settings on an IROAD X11, and the majority of the settings are the same on an IROAD X5. There's a couple extra settings on the X11, however. If you do have any questions at all, feel free to leave comments down below. We love to help out all of our clients, and the IROAD product has been great for us as well. But like I said, have any questions, definitely reach out. We're here to help. Cheers.